I have central heterochromia. My eyes are blue with yellow in the middle. How would you texture the iris? Basically like a more detailed version of that little cartoony example I did there. Using this one as an example. Just a lot of loopy shapes over each other in different shades and tones. If you want to check out somebody who does really great eyes, Mondays on Weasel. Monday, I'm not sure how you say that. Does amazingly realistic textured icons of eyes. Generally there's a bit of a ridge around the pupil and a darker line around the outside of the eye. Like a highlighted ridge, I mean. You get the idea. Oh yes, I have a... So the best way to learn textures is to do texture spheres, which is talked about on my favorite learning to draw website, Control Paint. And he's absolutely fantastic for learning to draw and giving advice and all that. I highly recommend watching the videos. So here's some texture spheres that I did. This one is glass. Oops. This one was based on some wet cherries. This one is based on rough earth. And this one is based on velvet, which is less of a sphere shape because the velvet was folded and I wasn't really sure how to wrap that around the sphere properly in the time I was doing it. Excuse me. So yeah, I was lucky enough to actually get a sphere of glass reference, but everything else I just, took a big big close-up photo of what I wanted to reference and tried my best to do a study of it in a spherical shape. And just, pay very close attention to where the highlights and shadows fall and, what creates the various types of bumps, what size are the bumps that are on it. Velvet has small bumps, but they're very soft. Textured earth has big and small bumps, but they're all very hard. Glass generally doesn't have bumps, but this one had some imperfections in it, some dents and divots. And, a cherry is going to be pretty smooth, especially a wet cherry, because water covers the texture of a surface and smooths it out. So, generally the wetter something is, the smoother it's going to be, but, and there's a fantastic thing on, let me see if I can find it here. There we go. This is a fantastic overview of texture. Among other things. You get the idea. So yeah, generally you just, again, like I've been saying all along, you want to pay attention to your references and keep referencing until you have a good mental image of what things are supposed to look like. And keep referencing after that, but, don't rely super heavily on them when you're going to do an original piece. It's totally okay to rely on references, but you don't want to slavishly copy any one reference. Cloth folds. Cloth folds are their own entire tutorial. There are a lot of fantastic resources out there about it if you just Google it, but a very rough, very quick version of it is generally you're going to get, with hanging folds, sort of V shapes coming down and away from the surface where they're hanging loose. Tension folds, you're going to get a lot of U shapes, like at the elbow or whatever, which spread out as well into these, a lot of V shapes and lines. Hanging and bunching is going to be a lot of U shapes, like the cowl of a shirt. Very rough, very quick. It's a giant topic that would take somebody more educated than me to explain. Foreshortening. Okay. Okay, so the best thing that I've seen for visualizing foreshortening is the spiral method, where you say, okay, so this is an arm that is not pointing at the viewer. It is made out of spirals, like a slinky. And, you know, you see mostly the side of the slinky because it's not pointing at you. If the arm was pointing towards you, things obviously get bigger as they get closer to you and smaller as they get farther away. But you can see more of the opening of the slinky. And I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this, but, you know, it's just a good way to bulk out form and get a good concept of, okay. If we say that the arm is made up of 4 sections, 2 for the upper arm and 2 for the lower arm. When we point the arm at us, you still have those 4 sections, but they are flattened out, become smaller visually because of the way the arm is pointing. This is very hard to explain. And, you know, like I said, bigger as it gets closer, smaller as it gets farther away. One of the best ways to give the impression that something is coming towards you is to put it in front of something else. So, you know, if you want a character going, hey, stop, stop, this is okay, but it'll give more of an impression that it's coming towards you if you put it in front of the body. But yeah, when you're moving and bending things, you can apply these crossbars on everything that make it easier to find where the points are supposed to be sitting when you move it into a different position. And there are all sorts of methods of measuring out the different shapes of the body, like using a foot, using a head, using a hand, and you can Google those various ways of measuring how long each part of the body is. But generally, as things come towards you, those cross sections are going to get shorter. Creating almost like a stumpy look if you weren't aware that it was being foreshortened. Does that cover your questions? Or do you have more specific question about foreshortening? Watch your language, Flying Fire. I say, having said ass like 10 times. Yeah. Okay, well, we're coming up on the end of the class here. Are there any other questions? Oh, with that, the color space concept, one way that you can figure out how you want to do a color scheme for your image is by taking out a section of the color sphere. Usually somewhat triangular, but can really be any shape. And then only using colors within that form. That's called a color gamut, and it is very useful. Looking over your shoulder? What do you mean? Oh, okay. Excuse me. That's a really common pose that a lot of people like to use, especially for sexy furries. So, the main thing to keep in mind to make it not look like the neck is broken is that the chin cannot come past the shoulder. So, if you're looking at the head from above, and this is the chin here, and these are the shoulders, this cannot go past here. Otherwise your neck is broken. So if you're doing it entirely from the back, you want to have the chin being obscured by the shoulder so that you can tell it's not going past it. Yeah, so your problem there with that image is that the way you got the head turned, the chin looks like it's going past the shoulder, and the head is turned too far. And again, the major lines of the neck that you're going to see are going to be those big masticator muscles, the big chewing muscles. You're not going to see a whole lot of other shapes on the neck except the spine. And even then, that's not going to really show up very well except on extremely skinny people. and the big muscles start under the ear. Yeah, I like the cartoony style you got going on with the face there. It's kind of neat. Like almost anime, but not quite. Any other questions?